She had waited her whole life for this moment, yet as the crowd cheered for every graduate, the CEO's daughter sat completely still in her wheelchair, alone in the corner of the hall. Her eyes glistened, but not with joy, only with a quiet ache that no one seemed to notice, until a single father stood up from the crowd. What happened next left the entire hall in silence and would change both of their lives forever. The graduation hall was overflowing with applause, camera flashes, and proud families rising to their feet. Every student who walked across the stage was met with flowers, hugs, and tearful cheers. But in the far corner, away from the bursts of confetti and laughter, sat Amara, the daughter of a powerful CEO. Her wheelchair was neatly positioned near the edge of the rows, but no one came to sit with her. Her mother had passed years ago, and her father, though wealthy, powerful, and always dressed in a polished suit, was emotionally distant, buried in meetings, business calls, and a reputation he guarded more than his own daughter's heart. Amara's fingers trembled slightly as she clutched the rolled certificate on her lap. For everyone else, graduation was a moment of triumph, but for her, it was another reminder of what she didn't have. No one to stand beside her, no one to celebrate her resilience, no one to hold her and say, "I'm proud of you." She remembered nights of studying late in her room, struggling to flip through books when her muscles refused to cooperate. She remembered crying quietly when her body betrayed her, paralyzing her from the waist down after the accident years ago. Yet, despite everything she had pushed through, today was her silent victory. But victories feel hollow when celebrated alone. As her classmates embraced their parents, Amara lowered her gaze. Maybe I should just leave quietly, she thought. It was better than sitting there as the only one without applause. She moved her wheelchair slightly toward the exit, but then she froze. Because at that very moment, someone's shadow fell across her lap. It wasn't her father. He was seated 3 rows away, checking his phone even during the ceremony. Instead, it was a tall man with worn-out shoes, his shirt slightly wrinkled, holding the small hand of a little girl who looked no older than 7. The man smiled gently. His daughter tugged at his hand and whispered something, and then the man crouched down to Amara's level. "Hi," he said softly. "I don't mean to intrude, but my daughter wanted to tell you something." The little girl hid shyly behind him, then peeked out. Her small voice trembled, but her words carried more warmth than Amara had felt in years. You look like a princess." For the first time that day, Amara's lips quivered, not in sadness, but in the shadow of a smile. The man introduced himself as Daniel, a single father who worked 2 jobs just to raise his little girl, Leela. He wasn't wealthy, his clothes weren't tailored, and he didn't belong in the world of CEOs and luxury cars, but he carried something far rarer: sincerity. Amara nodded politely, but her eyes betrayed her longing. Daniel could see it. The way she kept glancing at the stage, at the students wrapped in their families' arms, told a story deeper than words. When Amara's name had been called earlier, there had been polite applause, but no cheers, no flowers, no one rushing to her side. That absence was heavy in the air. Daniel felt it, and so did his little girl. So when the final round of applause echoed for the last graduate, Daniel did something no one expected. He stood up. Leela tugged his sleeve in confusion, but he whispered something in her ear, and her face lit up. Together, they walked straight toward Amara. The room quieted. The wealthy parents and proud families watched as this stranger, this man who clearly didn't belong in their world, stepped into the spotlight. He knelt beside Amara's wheelchair, placed a small bouquet of wildflowers picked by Leela that morning on her lap, and said, his voice steady, "You don't deserve to celebrate this alone. Today, you fought harder than most of us will in a lifetime. You earned this moment, Amara, and if no one else will stand with you, then I will." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Amara's father finally looked up from his phone, his face stiff with discomfort. But the hall's silence turned into something else, a slow, rising applause. One student began clapping, then another, and soon the entire hall erupted. Not for wealth, not for power, but for courage, resilience, and a girl who had fought against all odds. Amara's eyes overflowed, not with the loneliness that had followed her for years, but with a new kind of warmth, a belonging she had never felt before. She looked at Daniel, at little Leela smiling like sunshine, and for the first time in a long time, her heart whispered, maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. That day, Amara didn't just graduate with a degree. She graduated from years of silence, stepping into a world where love didn't come from wealth or power, but from the simple courage of someone who cared enough to stand beside her. Sometimes the people we least expect can show us the meaning of family. Amara didn't need her father's empire to feel valued. She only needed one kind act, one genuine voice, and one little girl who saw her as a princess. Because in the end, true wealth is not measured in money, but in the love we choose to give.